I think an injury to one is an injury to all is a real principle that some of us really do believe in. And if you really do believe that, then you can't sit by quietly when a genocide is being carried out in your name.
Painters Union, we're big fans of the Painters Union, obviously. Mentioned in the conversation with Ari, a big portion of our funding comes from unions, including the Painters Union. The Painters Union is one of our largest sponsors, actually. And so we're very appreciative of them to the support, and also appreciative of the work that they're doing. They're doing a lot of organizing work as a building trades union. They're doing a lot of advocacy work for even non-union employees in their industry, fighting against wage theft and abuse of undocumented workers in their industry. So they're doing, really doing a lot of good work. And they were one of the first unions to call for a ceasefire in Gaza. And they are now one of 7 unions representing almost half of the United States' union members to call for a complete end to arming Israel until ceasefire is achieved, which is really, there's all this language about the Biden-Harris administration working tirelessly for a ceasefire, despite being willing to use no leverage. It's just difficult to, it's really difficult to kind of buy these statements about I'm working tirelessly when you're not actually utilizing the levers of power that you have to make this happen. Who knows, maybe if it's even true that they're working so hard to do this, but they're just refusing to do the actual thing that would make it happen. And you don't get points for being needlessly tedious in your tasks, right? If I want to dig a hole big enough for a in-ground swimming pool, and I have a backhoe behind me, but I want to dig it out by hand so I can say I'm working tirelessly. It's like, well, you can do that, maybe, but you don't get extra points for it, and it doesn't make it happen. Actually, it doesn't make it happen, and it certainly doesn't make it happen as fast as if you just use the tool that you have sitting right behind you, the backhoe, to actually dig the hole. That's where we are with the ceasefire in Gaza as it relates to arming Israel. Maybe they're having conversations every single day with the Israeli government, but if they're not, we're the ones funding Israel. So if you just stop doing that, that creates a huge incentive for the Israeli government to stop what's happening. And so the Painters Union has been very courageous in their advocacy for Palestinian people and their dignity and everything. And so General President Jimmy Williams spoke at their convention, which wrapped up last week, about their work on this issue and why he thinks it's important to be active on this issue. And so let's play this clip from Brother Jimmy.
There isn't another union in the building trades that hasn't called for a ceasefire like this union has, number one. Number two, we have called on the federal government to stop funding the genocide. I have personally been attacked for taking this position. In principle, I stand personally in support of calling for an end to the genocide that's going on right now in Palestine. The investment world and the investment community is messy. We are working really hard at the International Pension Fund on coming up with a more responsible investment policy when it comes to our investments, which is your money, to make sure that we don't fund our self-destruction. This union does not support what is going on in Gaza. These things are messy, and I'm the last person that should be talking about foreign policy. But I'm going to tell you this much: I don't want Donald Trump's hands on the nuclear weapons of this country, and we're not going to back down.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate. So there you go. I mean, pretty brave stance, and to rapturous applause and a standing ovation there at the end. You know, I mean, this is not, you didn't hear any boos or anything in that clip. And so, this seems like a position that is at the very least not unpopular in the Painters Union. And even going that step further and hinting at that they're looking at divesting their pensions from what's going on in Israel. And the way that he worded it, to make sure that we're not funding our own self-destruction, made it seem like there was going to be potentially a broader look at pension investments by the Painters Union, because there have been a lot of pieces, maybe even in these times has reported on it. It wouldn't surprise me if they have, but there's been a lot of good reporting about how pension investments have actually been used to hurt workers, by private equity firms. Private equity firms using the pension funds of working people to buy other companies and really oppress and, destroy the wages and working conditions of workers at companies like Red Lobster, for instance. I don't know if pension funds were involved in that, but it wouldn't surprise me. But that general dynamic has played out before, and it would be really good to see the nation's largest pension funds refuse to participate in things like that, saying that, no, actually, we're not going to let private equity firms use the money of our members to destroy the livelihoods of other people, just speaking economically and within this country, much less, and even more obviously, I think our pension funds should not be used to, kill people in Gaza. I think that should really be kind of a baseline. And it's really cool to see the Painters Union doing this. I mean, they're really going out there and going out on a limb, at least, as it relates to kind of the Overton window, if you will. And he didn't do that without some pushback, including from Orrin Cass. Orrin Cass, for those of you who don't know, is chief economist at the American Compass, which is developing the conservative economic agenda to supplant blind faith in free markets with a focus on workers, their families, and communities in the nation. Okay, so it's supposedly, a capitalism skeptical, conservative, pro-worker think tank that he is the chief economist of. That's how they would like to. That's how they would like to say it.
Okay.
That's how they would like people to see this this venture that they have here. But he was one of the people that was attacking our brother Jimmy Williams for his statements, saying, and, the Painters Union tweeted this clip of Jimmy Williams, and Orrin Cass retweeted it saying, "When I suggest unions should focus on representing workers and stay out of politics, I get lectured that a labor movement must exercise political power to advance economic interests. But I'm still not entirely clear on how painters benefit from accusing Israel of genocide." And, Jonah Furman, the communications director for the UAW, friend of the show, if I might say so myself, said that Orrin Cass and, his ilk are the shut up and dribble of the labor movement. And that's really right. We see these people who, say in theory, oh, I support workers, I support unions. Unions are important. We need them for, the conservative nuclear family structure and all of this kind of stuff. It's really important, but they don't support actually existing unions. Any actually existing unions they don't like, they think are too, political or whatever, right? And so he says that Orrin Cass, in response to Jonah Furman, says, if the UAW communications director cannot understand that a union leader's obligations as a representative are different than an athlete's as an individual, that explains a lot. And, obviously Jonah Furman does understand that a leader's obligations are different than an individual. Actually, it makes it more important that you speak up on these issues that do affect working people, and stuff like that stuff like this does affect working people. Obviously, the painters union is going to have members with family in Israel and Gaza, right? So you just have that's just this human level. There's almost certainly a connection that many of the painters union's members have, right? Obviously. And then you have the connection that really binds working people across the world, which is our status as working people and really our duty to other working people. You know, the Palestinian General Trade Union Federation has called on working people across the country to do more, or across the world rather, to do more on stopping what's going on in Gaza. And so, if we as a labor movement do not have a responsibility to support other unions when they are being killed, it's difficult to imagine what we have what kind of responsibilities we do have, right? And so he talks about, Orrin Cass then goes on to like quote some polls that the American Compass has done, not of union members, mind you, not of union members, but of working people, quote unquote, generally, and quote unquote potential union members. And I don't know what the hell that means. Potential union member. I don't know what that means, right? But he does not. And the question is, do workers want their organizations involved in politics? And so he waves around these polls saying, no, they don't. Despite the fact that these do not include actual union members. And, it's really frustrating seeing stuff like this, right? Because if workers actually did not want their unions active on political issues, then they would not be, right? Because the leaders of unions are elected by the membership. And so if the membership actually didn't want their unions to be active on political issues, then they would not elect leaders that have those sorts of prerogatives. And it's actually kind of funny how many union meetings and conventions and things like this that I've been to for my own union, but for others as well. And the only union meeting that I have ever been in where it was taken as a serious proposal to not engage at all in electoral politics was the Industrial Workers of the World, which I assume Orrin Cass does not want all unions to be more like the IWW. That's just going to be my assumption. Probably not. And so in every other union meeting that I've been a part of, it's taken as a given, actually, basically, that the union is an organization of its members, is a representative of its members in the workplace and in society, and that we should exercise our power thusly. And so it's very frustrating, seeing these kinds of attacks on workers and unions by people like Orrin Cass, who again, say I support unions in theory, but actually existing unions I don't like.
Right. I mean, some of us really believe that an injury to one is an injury to all.
Yeah.
We really believe that, and that's the spirit in which we stand with the Palestinian people, because they have endured more than any people should, and we stand in solidarity with them. And again, an injury to one is an injury to all. We take that seriously. You mentioned earlier the Palestinian unions have already called for solidarity and have requested solidarity. So, that's part of our responsibility, I feel like. Human rights have always been connected to our movement. It's always been a part of our movement, the fight for human rights. And I think we have a duty to speak up against genocide that is being supported by our own money and weapons,
right?
Our tax dollars at work. So, we have to speak up for a peace economy, not a war economy. We shouldn't have to sell our labor to the war machine to provide for our families. That's a reasonable thing. It's reasonable that our unions have those conversations, that we talk about that. There's so many issues facing our people across this country: poverty, our climate, inequality. It's time that we have these kind of conversations about building a better future. And so, I think it's ridiculous to assume that labor unions can't or shouldn't talk about these issues. Who else should? I mean, if we shouldn't, who has the standing, right? We are, We as working people have just as much right and responsibility to speak out on issues of global concern as anyone else. And as far as I'm concerned, elected leaders of organized workers have just as much authority to speak on these matters as the buffoons in the media. Right? I mean, I'm sorry. Why is the president of the Painters Union a less credible person to hear from on this issue than some of the idiots that are on CNN and Fox News every day?
Right.
So, again, I think an injury to one is an injury to all is a real principle that some of us really do believe in. And if you really do believe that, then you can't sit by quietly when a genocide is being funded and carried out in your name and with your tax dollars. That's, sorry, it's a red line.
Yeah. You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.